The stars in the night sky were silent. Out in the vast reaches of space, an alien fleet hovered silently above Earth, preparing for their invasion. For weeks, they had been watching the planet, its people, its defenses, its military. And now, the time had come. The Xereks, an ancient and powerful alien race, had decided it was time to claim Earth as their own. The Xerek warships were enormous, their dark, jagged hulls cutting through space like blades. They were unstoppable. No planet had ever resisted their power, and no civilization had ever stood in their way. But Earth was different. The humans were far weaker than the Xereks in terms of technology and military might, and yet there was something about this planet, something about its people, that intrigued them. As the fleet descended toward Earth's atmosphere, Commander Vrock, the leader of the invasion, stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at the blue and green planet below. He had studied Earth for years. He knew the people were weak, but they had one thing the Xereks wanted: potential. "We'll begin the assault at dawn," Vrock said, his voice deep and cold. "Prepare the troops." On Earth, the day began like any other. The world was unaware of the impending doom in the skies above them. People were busy with their routines, commuting to work, going to school, walking their dogs, and sitting in coffee shops, completely oblivious to the warships hovering over them. But far from the cities, in the remote mountains, something strange was happening. Jake Harper had always been an ordinary man. He wasn't famous, he wasn't a soldier, and he wasn't a genius. But Jake had a unique connection to the planet, a connection he didn't fully understand. He had spent most of his life feeling an unexplained pull to the Earth, as though something deep within it was calling to him. This morning, Jake was in the mountains, just outside of a small town. He had been hiking alone, something he loved to do in order to clear his mind. He reached the top of a ridge and paused to look out over the valley below. It was a beautiful day, cloudless and calm. But as Jake stood there, something in the air shifted. The ground trembled slightly beneath his feet, and the wind suddenly picked up, whipping around him. Jake frowned, feeling a strange pressure building in the air, as if the very atmosphere around him had become heavier. It wasn't normal. He had hiked this ridge countless times, and he had never felt anything like this before. He took a step back, his eyes scanning the sky. That's when he saw them. At first, he thought they were just clouds, dark, swirling storm clouds, but then he realized the truth. The clouds were moving in a pattern, unnatural and deliberate. They were being controlled, forced into a shape that was too precise to be a natural storm. His heart raced. Something was wrong. Jake reached for his phone, trying to snap a picture, but before he could even unlock the screen, a massive explosion of light erupted in the sky. It was so bright, so powerful, that it felt like the very sun had exploded. Jake fell to his knees, the energy from the blast pushing against his body, forcing him to the ground. For a moment, everything went black. When Jake opened his eyes, the world had changed. The sky was no longer the peaceful blue he had known. It was filled with strange, dark clouds, swirling and shifting in unnatural patterns. The earth beneath him seemed to pulse with energy, as though the very ground was alive, breathing. The air around him was thick and electric, crackling with a power he couldn't understand. Before he could fully process what had happened, Jake felt a sudden, overwhelming urge, a pull deep inside his chest. It was as if something was calling to him, guiding him. He couldn't explain it, but every fiber of his being told him to follow it. He didn't know why, but he started running toward the source of the energy. His feet carried him through the rocky terrain, moving faster than he ever thought possible. As he ran, the air seemed to get denser, heavier, until it was almost difficult to breathe. But still, he felt compelled to go forward. He reached a clearing deep in the forest, a place he had never been before. At the center of the clearing was an ancient stone altar. It looked like something out of a forgotten time, carved with symbols Jake didn't recognize, worn down by centuries of neglect. But there was something about it, something powerful that called to him. He approached the altar cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The moment he touched the stone, the ground beneath him shook violently. The sky above him cracked open like a thunderous rift, sending bolts of lightning streaking across the sky. And then, in the distance, Jake heard it. A roar. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard, a deafening, unearthly growl that seemed to come from the very core of the planet. It echoed through the forest, sending the birds flying in all directions. The roar grew louder, and Jake felt a surge of power course through him. It was the same energy he had felt earlier, but this time it was different. This time, it wasn't just a feeling. It was real. He could feel the raw power pulsing through the earth itself. It was alive. And somehow, Jake knew that it was tied to him, to something he had done, something he couldn't yet understand. Suddenly, the roar was replaced by an eerie silence. The ground stopped shaking, and the wind died down. The air became still. And then, a flash of light erupted from the center of the altar, blinding him. Jake fell back, his hands covering his eyes as the light overwhelmed him. It was as if the planet itself was trying to communicate with him, trying to send him a message. He could feel it in his bones. Something ancient and powerful was awakening deep beneath the Earth's surface. The Xeric fleet, meanwhile, had already begun their assault on Earth. They had landed in multiple locations around the planet and were quickly overpowering the human forces. Cities fell within hours. The Xeracs were ruthless, their weapons devastating. But even as they wiped out one human stronghold after another, they could sense something was wrong. The Earth wasn't reacting the way they had expected. It wasn't fighting back the way a planet should. Commander Vrock stood at the helm of his flagship, staring down at Earth. His mind raced. The energy from the planet was unlike anything he had encountered before. It wasn't just the Earth's resistance. It was something else. It was as if the planet itself had awakened, and now it was sending out a warning. The humans are not the only ones who are dangerous, Vrock muttered under his breath. Something more powerful is hidden beneath this world. As he spoke, a surge of energy pulsed from the planet's surface, sending a shockwave across the Xeric fleet. The ships rocked violently, their systems failing. For a moment, there was chaos in the fleet. The Xeracs had never experienced anything like this. They had expected a quick victory, but Earth was fighting back, not with weapons, but with something much older. And then, as the shockwave subsided, something even more terrifying happened. Jake, standing alone in the clearing, felt the energy coursing through him. His body burned with it, his mind racing with visions of things he couldn't comprehend. His heart beat faster and faster, and then, just as suddenly as the energy had come, everything went silent. And with that silence came the truth. Jake Harper, a simple human, had unleashed a power that would change the course of the entire galaxy. He had just killed himself, but in doing so, he had triggered something far greater. The universe would never be the same. The world had never seen anything like this. Across the globe, the signs of Earth's awakening were undeniable. For the first time in history, humanity found itself in the middle of something far bigger than anything it could have imagined. The pulse of energy that had erupted from the planet following Jake's death had spread quickly, like a ripple through the very fabric of space and time itself. It wasn't just a physical force. It was something that reached deep into the minds of people, stirring something inside them, causing strange dreams and visions that left them unsettled. Sarah, Jake's closest friend, was among the many who felt the pull. At first, she thought it was just grief. Jake's death had been so sudden, so violent. But then she realized that there was something more to it. Something had been triggered by his death, and it had connected her to the planet in a way she couldn't explain. It wasn't just her. Millions of people around the world were experiencing the same feeling, a deep, unshakable connection to the Earth, a calling that seemed to come from deep beneath the ground. Sarah had always believed that there was something unique about Earth, something that made it different from other planets, but now she could feel it. The power that had been dormant for so long was stirring, and the planet itself seemed to be alive, watching, waiting. As Sarah walked through the streets of the city, she could see that something had changed in the people around her. They moved with a kind of urgency, as if they were all sensing the same thing. The air felt different, charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Every now and then, she would catch someone's eye, and she would see the same look in their gaze, a quiet recognition, as if they, too, understood that the world had shifted. Back at the military headquarters, the leaders of the world's nations were in a state of confusion. Reports were flooding in from all over the planet, but no one knew exactly what to make of it. The power coming from the Earth was unlike anything their scientists had ever encountered. Seismographs were showing irregular readings, as if the planet's very core was moving. Satellites were picking up strange energy signatures coming from deep beneath the surface. Nothing made sense. They had tried to communicate with the Xerx, but the alien fleet had already begun retreating, leaving Earth's defenses in disarray. It was as if they had seen something on this planet that they didn't understand and didn't want to face. Commander Vrock of the Xerx, still recovering from his fleet's initial attack, stared at the data coming in from his officers. The retreat had been chaotic, but now he knew something had gone terribly wrong. The Xerax were not the only race in the galaxy that could sense the strange energy emanating from Earth. In fact, Vrock suspected that it wasn't just an energy burst, it was a signal, something that could not be ignored. The Xerax had encountered many planets over the centuries, but never one like this. Earth was different. Something deep within it had been awakened, and as the days passed, more and more ships from other parts of the galaxy began to appear at the edge of Earth's orbit. These were no Xerax ships. They were older, far more advanced, and far more dangerous. The first to arrive were the Zorvax, a race that had been dormant for millennia. Their ships appeared as dark silhouettes against the starry sky, massive and imposing. The Zorvax were known for their ruthless conquests, leaving behind nothing but destruction in their wake. They had not come to make peace. They had come for what Earth had awakened, a power far older and more dangerous than any of the galaxy's known civilizations. Back on Earth, Sarah found herself unable to ignore the call any longer. The strange connection she had felt to the planet was growing stronger, more insistent. Her dreams were filled with images of ancient beings, tall, powerful figures whose faces were obscured by shadows, but whose presence exuded an ancient power. Their eyes seemed to burn with a light that came from deep within the universe itself. They were watching, waiting. One night, as Sarah sat alone in her apartment, the ground shook again. It wasn't as violent as before, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. She rushed to the window and looked up at the sky. The strange clouds had returned. They moved with a purpose, swirling around the atmosphere as if they were being controlled. She could feel the tension in the air, the sense that something momentous was about to happen. A flash of light appeared in the sky, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The ships had arrived. She knew it before anyone else did. The first of the alien vessels appeared, massive, dark shapes descending from the clouds. There was no mistaking it now. Earth was no longer just a target. It was a beacon. A signal had gone out to the farthest reaches of space, and now every race that had ever crossed the stars was heading toward it. But who would reach it first? And what did they all want? As Sarah watched the ships descend, she felt the unmistakable pull to move toward them. The connection she had been feeling all this time was no coincidence. Earth had chosen her. The planet had called her. She had to go to it. With each passing minute, the world around her seemed to hold its breath. Every human on Earth, no matter how far they were from the epicenter of the energy surge, felt the weight of the moment. The unknown was coming, and it would not wait. Sarah knew that Earth's fate, humanity's fate, was tied to what came next. She had to be ready, whatever that meant. Far above her, the ships continued their descent. They were not here for peace. They were here for something much more precious, something humanity had unknowingly unlocked. And whatever it was It was about to change everything. The Zorvax knew it. The Xerix knew it. And Earth had just sent out a message to the universe. We are not what you think. We are not the weak, helpless creatures you thought you could conquer. And Sarah Harper, the young woman who had felt the pull of Earth's energy, was about to discover the truth. The universe would soon know who Earth really was, and they would never forget. As Sarah walked away from the window, she felt the ground beneath her feet tremble once again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't a mere earthquake or the aftershock of the energy wave. It was a warning. The Earth was alive in a way that no one could have ever imagined. The humming sensation that had been faint at first now grew louder in her mind, almost as if the planet itself was speaking to her. She had heard of strange occurrences before, unexplained phenomena that science couldn't quite explain. But this was beyond anything anyone could have predicted. And Sarah knew it wasn't just her. People across the world were experiencing the same thing, feeling that deep primal connection to the planet. It was as if Earth was trying to tell them something. It was urgent, but what was it trying to say? Meanwhile, in the deep reaches of space, the Xerix and Zorvax fleets were on a collision course. The two alien empires, once bitter enemies, now had a common goal, the power that lay hidden within Earth, and both races knew that whoever controlled this power would hold the key to ultimate dominance in the galaxy. The Xerix, led by Commander Vrock, had been forced to retreat after their initial failed invasion of Earth. They had underestimated the planet, its inhabitants, and most of all, its hidden strength. But now, they were returning, this time in force, with a far larger fleet. And Vrock, though frustrated and humiliated by the retreat, knew one thing for certain: they could not let the Zorvax get to Earth first. The Xerix had always been the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and Vrock was determined to ensure that Earth's hidden power belonged to them. The Zorvax, on the other hand, had no intention of sharing. Their ships, massive and imposing, glided through space with a chilling grace. The Zorvax had once ruled over countless planets, their ancient empire stretching far beyond the borders of the known universe. They were the first race to ever encounter Earth's power, but they had left it behind, fearing what they couldn't control. Now, they were returning to reclaim what they had once abandoned, Earth's potential. And this time, they had no intention of leaving anything to chance. They had seen what the humans had awoken, and knew that it wasn't just a planetary defense system. It was something far older and far more dangerous. Back on Earth, the world was beginning to prepare for the inevitable. Governments scrambled to establish communication channels, while military forces mobilized in secret. Earth's cities were fortified, but no one knew what kind of weapons or forces they were up against. Humanity had no defense against the advanced technology of the Xerix or the Zorvax. Still, people like Sarah couldn't help but feel that there was something more they had to do. She felt like she had a part to play in all of this, something bigger than herself. Sarah's connection to the strange energy emanating from Earth was growing stronger by the hour. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was an instinct, something she couldn't deny. It was calling her, pulling her toward the ancient altar where Jake had died. It was almost as if Earth's power was speaking directly to her, urging her to come closer. And so, without telling anyone, Sarah made her way toward the mountains. The journey was long, and the closer she got to the ridge, the more intense the energy became. The air was thick with an electric charge, and every step she took seemed to bring her closer to something she couldn't fully comprehend. As she reached the clearing where Jake had fallen, she could feel it. The energy was practically humming in the air, like a massive power waiting to be tapped into. But Sarah wasn't alone. As she reached the stone altar, she felt the presence of something nearby, something or someone watching her. Turning around, her breath caught in her throat. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, cloaked in shadows. It was tall, its features obscured by a hooded cloak, but the energy it radiated was unmistakable. This was no ordinary person. It was one of the ancient beings she had seen in her dreams. The figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant, carrying with it a weight of eons. "The time has come," it said, its words echoing in Sarah's mind, as if they were spoken directly into her thoughts. "Earth's awakening is only the beginning. You are part of something much greater. You must unlock the power of this world before they arrive." Sarah didn't speak. She could barely breathe. The being stepped forward, its eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural light. "You are connected to this planet in a way no human ever has been. You are the key to controlling what has been awakened, but you must act quickly. The Zeraks are already preparing for another assault, and the Zorvaks will not be far behind. They want what lies beneath this world. They will stop at nothing to take it. You must awaken the heart of the earth before they can reach it." Sarah's heart raced. The Zeraks, the Zorvaks, all of them were coming for Earth, but she had no idea what she was supposed to do. What power was the figure talking about? What did it mean by the heart of the earth? She could barely wrap her mind around it. But as the figure spoke again, something inside Sarah clicked. It wasn't just the energy she had been feeling, it was a sense of purpose. A deep understanding washed over her. The earth was alive, more alive than she had ever imagined, and it needed her to help it unlock its full potential. But the planet itself was not enough. Earth's power had to be guided. The time had come for humanity to step forward, to protect the planet, to stop the galactic forces that would destroy it. "We are the protectors of this world," the figure said, raising its hand toward the sky. "But we need your help. Earth cannot do this alone." With those words, the ground beneath Sarah's feet began to pulse with light. The ancient symbols on the stone altar, which had been worn with age, began to glow, as if responding to the presence of the figure. The energy she had felt for so long, now stronger, clearer, coursed through her, guiding her movements. She wasn't just a human anymore. She was a part of the earth itself. The being nodded, almost as if it had been expecting this. "You are ready. But there is no time to waste. You must act before the invaders reach the surface. The future of this planet, and the future of the galaxy, depends on what happens here." As the figure vanished into the shadows, Sarah understood one thing. This was not a battle between alien species anymore. This was a battle for the very soul of Earth itself. And she, Sarah Harper, was the only one who could protect. Sarah stood frozen in the clearing, her mind racing as the energy around her swirled and pulsed like a living thing. Her body hummed with it, the ancient power resonating deep within her bones. The figure that had spoken to her was gone, but its words echoed in her mind like a relentless drumbeat. "You are the key. You must awaken the heart of the earth." But what did that mean? What was this heart, and how was she supposed to unlock it? The weight of it all felt unbearable. She had always thought of herself as ordinary, just another person trying to get by in a world full of challenges. But now everything had changed. She was being called to something far greater, something that was beyond her comprehension. The world was on the brink of an invasion by alien forces that had already begun their assault. The Zeraks, the Zorvaks, both were coming, drawn by the power buried deep within the planet. And Sarah was somehow at the center of it all. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the clearing. As Sarah's mind continued to swirl with questions, a new sensation washed over her. Urgency. The planet was calling for her to act, and it was doing so with an intensity that left her no room for doubt. Whatever this heart was, it was time to find it. The only question was where to start. She reached down and touched the altar, her fingers brushing against the ancient symbols. As her hand made contact, a shockwave of energy pulsed through her, nearly knocking her off her feet. The symbols began to glow brighter, flickering like fireflies, and the air around her became thick with an otherworldly force. It was as if the altar itself was alive, as though it recognized her and responded to her presence. The ground beneath her feet began to rumble, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to shake the very core of the earth. A voice suddenly filled her mind, soft but powerful. "The heart is close. Follow the pulse. Trust what you feel. Sarah didn't hesitate. She stood up straight, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the energy now, like a magnetic pull drawing her forward. There was no question. She had to follow it. Turning away from the altar, Sarah moved deeper into the forest. The air was thick with tension, every step she took carrying her closer to the unknown. Her thoughts raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Could it be true? Could Earth really be alive, as the figure had suggested? And if so, what did that mean for humanity's survival? She didn't have answers, only the deep, gnawing sense that time was running out. The path ahead was dark and dense, but Sarah was no longer afraid. The pulse of energy was guiding her, urging her to go faster, to push onward. She stumbled through the forest, her feet moving almost of their own accord until she came to a sudden stop. She was at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast valley far below. The ground trembled beneath her, and the pulse of energy intensified. It was coming from somewhere deep in the valley. Without a second thought, Sarah began to descend, climbing down the rocky face of the cliff with determination. The air grew colder as she moved lower, the sense of urgency building with every step. And then, as if responding to her presence, a beam of light shot up from the valley floor, illuminating the darkness like a beacon. Sarah gasped. The light was coming from a massive structure, ancient, worn, and covered in the same strange symbols she had seen on the altar. It was buried deep beneath the surface, hidden for centuries. Without hesitation, Sarah made her way toward the glowing structure, her heart racing as the energy grew stronger, pulling her forward. She could feel it now, the unmistakable connection between her and the planet. It was as though she was part of something much larger than herself, a force greater than any single human could comprehend. As she approached the structure, a deep hum filled the air, vibrating through her very bones. The light around her intensified, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to come alive. There was no mistaking it. This was the heart of the earth, the source of the power that had been awakened, and Sarah, somehow, was the one who had been chosen to unlock it. She reached the entrance, a massive stone door engraved with the same symbols that had appeared on the altar. The pulse of energy was strongest here, and Sarah could feel it reverberating through the stone. She placed her hand on the door, her fingers brushing against the ancient carvings. The moment her skin made contact, the door began to shift. It groaned as it slowly opened, revealing a vast chamber bathed in a soft, ethereal light. Inside, the walls were lined with crystals that hummed with energy, casting shimmering reflections across the chamber. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it, sitting at the heart of this ancient structure, was a glowing orb. It pulsed with the same energy Sarah had felt for days, radiating power that was almost overwhelming. This, she knew, was the heart of the earth. Without thinking, she stepped forward, her fingers trembling as she reached out to touch the orb. The moment her hand made contact, a surge of energy exploded through her, sending a shockwave of power cascading through the chamber. Her vision blurred as she felt herself being pulled into the very core of the earth. The ground beneath her feet vanished, and she was no longer standing in the chamber. She was floating, weightless, surrounded by a swirling vortex of light and energy. Images flashed before her eyes, visions of ancient civilizations, of battles fought across the galaxy, of planets being consumed by fire. But there were other visions too, images of Earth, of humanity, and of a future that had yet to be written, a future that depended on the choices Sarah made in this very moment. She could feel the weight of it all, the responsibility pressing down on her. The Xereks, the Zorvax, all of them were coming for the power that lay within the earth, but they didn't understand it. They didn't know what they were dealing with. And Sarah, she was the only one who could protect it. She was the only one who could control the power that the galaxy feared. As the light around her grew blinding, she heard the voice again. You are the Earth's protector. You are its champion. The fate of this world is in your hands. With a surge of energy, Sarah felt herself snap back into the chamber, her feet once again planted firmly on the ground. The orb in front of her pulsed one final time, and then, as if acknowledging her, it settled into a steady glow. The chamber was silent once again. Sarah took a deep breath, her body trembling with the force of what had just happened. She had unlocked the heart of the Earth, but now she knew there was no turning back. The invaders would soon arrive, and they would stop at nothing to claim what Earth had to offer. But Sarah was ready. The Earth had chosen her, and she would fight to protect it, no matter the cost. The fate of the planet and the galaxy rested in her hands. Sarah stood motionless in the chamber, the pulsating energy from the orb still reverberating through her body. She could feel the immense power that had been unlocked, coursing through her veins, binding her to the very core of the Earth. It was both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend everything that had just happened, the weight of her newfound responsibility crashing down on her. Outside, the world was on the brink of chaos. The fleets of the Xerix and Zorvax were closing in, drawn by the same pulse that Sarah had followed. They were aware of the power beneath the Earth's surface, and they had no intention of letting it remain in human hands. But Sarah knew something they didn't. They had no idea what they were truly dealing with. The Earth's power wasn't just some weapon or resource to be taken. It was alive, ancient, and it had a purpose far beyond the comprehension of any alien race. She had felt it, connected to it in a way she couldn't explain. The energy from the orb had shown her glimpses of the past, of civilizations long forgotten, and of beings far older than any of the galaxy's current empires. They had once ruled, yes, but now Earth had awakened, and it was ready to defend itself. And Sarah, she was its guardian. The planet had chosen her, and with that choice came a burden she could not ignore. For a moment, she considered the enormity of what lay ahead. The Xerix, the Zorvax, they were both massive threats, advanced in technology, and ruthless in their conquests. Earth had never faced such a challenge before. Humanity had always been divided, focused on their own petty conflicts, unaware of the greater danger that lurked in the vastness of space. But now, everything had changed. The time for division was over. The time for unity had arrived. Suddenly, a sharp mechanical voice cut through the silence in the chamber, jolting Sarah out of her thoughts. "Human, are you ready?" The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was deep and echoing, filled with an ancient authority that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She instinctively knew it wasn't the voice of the figure she had encountered earlier, nor was it one of the alien invaders. It was something far older, something connected to the planet itself. "I'm ready," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. The words seemed to have power, as if they were a declaration of something she had already accepted deep within herself. For a long moment, the chamber was silent, save for the soft hum of the orb. Then the voice spoke again, this time with a sense of finality. "Then we begin." The ground beneath her feet trembled again, but this time it was different. The power she had unlocked, the heart of the Earth, was awakening. She felt it surge through the chamber, radiating outward in all directions. The walls seemed to come alive, the crystals glowing brighter as the energy in the room amplified. Sarah could feel it building, reaching out, calling to something far beyond her comprehension. Her senses expanded as the Earth's power coursed through her. She could feel the pulse of the planet beneath her feet, could sense the movement of the tectonic plates deep below the surface, the flow of magma, the rhythm of the oceans, and the stirring of the atmosphere. It was all interconnected, all part of a greater, living organism. And she was the conduit, the one chosen to harness it. But it wasn't just Earth she could feel now. In the distance, beyond the atmosphere, she felt the alien fleets. She could sense the Xerix and Zorvax ships approaching, their weapons charging, their fleets moving with purpose and intent. The Xerix, once arrogant in their power, now understood that Earth wasn't just another world to conquer. It was a force that had been dormant for millennia, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And that moment had come. Sarah's body tingled with the pressure of the energy she now controlled. She could feel the Earth's defenses stirring, ready to protect itself. But she knew that Earth alone wouldn't be enough to defeat the invaders. She had to act. She had to harness the full potential of the power she had unlocked before the Xerics and Zorvax arrived. Closing her eyes, Sarah took a deep breath. She focused, letting the energy flow through her, guiding it, controlling it. The orb at the center of the chamber pulsed in time with her heartbeat, its light brighter now, more focused. She could feel the connection between her and the planet grow stronger, a bond that could not be broken. She was one with the Earth, and she would fight for it with everything she had. The ground beneath her feet began to shake more violently now, the energy rising in a torrent. The stone walls of the chamber cracked and groaned as the power surged, but Sarah held steady. She reached out with her mind, connecting to the core of the Earth, the very heart of the planet. "Show them who we are," the voice whispered again, almost as if it were a command. And then it hit her, the realization of what she had to do. She wasn't just protecting Earth. She was awakening something far more powerful, something that had been hidden beneath the surface for eons. The heart of the Earth was a weapon, yes, but it was also a message to anyone who dared threaten this world. With newfound determination, Sarah raised her hands, and the energy followed, streaming from her fingertips. The power surged through the chamber, expanding outward, tearing through the walls, breaking free into the open air. She felt the pulse of the Earth growing stronger with every passing second, as if the planet itself was rising to meet her call. Above the surface, the sky began to darken. The once peaceful clouds shifted into swirling, violent formations, as though the very weather was reacting to Sarah's command. The alien fleets, now visible in the distance, had no idea what was coming. But Sarah did. She felt the Earth's heartbeat echo through the atmosphere, through the very fabric of space. The planet was no longer just a world. Earth was becoming something more, something capable of defending itself, capable of fighting back against the galaxy's most powerful empires. Suddenly, there was a flash, a brilliant burst of light, and then everything went silent. The world seemed to stop. For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. And then, with a force that felt like it was shaking the universe itself, the energy exploded outward. The alien fleets, already close to Earth's orbit, felt the blast first. They couldn't react in time. The Xerics, with their massive, heavily armored ships, were the first to be struck. Their vessels, powerful and advanced as they were, began to crack and disintegrate under the sheer force of the Earth's awakening. The light from Sarah's command swept through the fleets like a cleansing wave, ripping through ships, disabling weapons, and leaving them crippled in space. The Zorvax ships, ancient and far more technologically advanced, fared no better. Though they had once dominated the galaxy with their advanced technology, they, too, were caught off guard. Their shields flared and flickered under the force of the Earth's energy. The ground beneath their feet trembled as the planet's power reached them. But Sarah was only getting started. The Earth had spoken. The universe would never forget who humanity was.